Here's some historical context about estate trusts. So this will come in handy later. If you ever wondered what a Cestui trust, we're going to get into it. So after the Great London Fire in 1666, people left their possessions and never returned. And then the obvious problem is that you didn't know if someone was alive and dead, but their private property remained, and someone needed to manage it. Parliament in Westminster, behind closed doors, then passed the infamous Proof of Life Act, or Cestui Act. Some people just say Cestui. The fundamental idea being that the state has control of everyone's estate trust until a living man or woman comes forward and proves they are alive, and then can make claims for damages. So this is kind of, and this is not the first time that this has happened, but this is a good historical context. So fast forward to 1933, here in the District United States, the FDR and Congress declared that the United States of America Incorporated is bankrupt, and they passed HJR 192. They didn't tell the American public that the incorporated company was bankrupt. They let the American public presume that they were talking about the Republic. Okay, this creates a public charitable trust, which is comprised of millions of personal estate trusts for every U.S. citizen. So every American, especially now, 1933, whenever they were not recording their names in the land, it was pretty easy to kind of kidnap those Americans and put them into the international sea jurisdiction, because the District United States invented the U.S. citizenship status with the 14th Amendment. So if you claim to be a U.S. citizen, even if passively, then you are in that jurisdiction. And then they just further trapped you in that jurisdiction by creating an estate trust for you that had your name. So what does a trust do? So the United States of America Incorporated was declared bankrupt. In order to pay debts to its creditors in Europe, FDR and Congress created a state trust for every American, and also presumed that they were U.S. citizens. Because the incorporated entity, the United States of America, created U.S. citizenship with the 14th Amendment, U.S. citizens are considered employees of that company. When each American is born, a birth certificate is created for them. The birth certificate is then used to create an estate trust for that American. And this is the semantic deceit here, using their given name. John Michael Smith, or John Michael Smith in all caps. And those are two different versions of estate trusts. There are, in fact, 3 different types of estate trusts that have been created for you, and that makes it even more confusing. But the reason they're able to take your name is because they've allowed Americans, or intentionally done so, to dumb us down, so that we no longer understand the importance of the land jurisdiction and recording our names to the land and declaring the law or expressing the law in writing for our private property. So because it was so convenient that none of that was happening on the land, it was very easy to take our names. And it was very easy to assign our names to legal estates, legal estate vessels, or commercial vessels, if you will. Because Americans are not in the habit of recording a baby's name. Yeah, there is no public record the baby exists on the land. They just presume that after 2 weeks, well, we haven't heard from you. We didn't see any announcements on the public record that you were born. So we just kind of assumed that your child died of that 2-week, baby illness. And so we're going to presume, just like 1666, they're going to presume that that man or woman is lost at sea, and they are just going to continue to manage that estate, the one that they conveniently created in your name, until you come back one day and prove that you are alive, right? So that's what we're doing with our 928 documents and our 1779 declarations, is we are establishing ourselves on the land. We are correcting the record, as we say, and saying that we are alive. Yeah, go ahead.
So I worked at the hospital, and I would do the heel sticks on the baby, so the blood goes on the birth certificate, and the whole 9 yards. So from what I'm to understand, the number on the back of that is actually the number they use to trade you in the open market.
Yes.
Is that the same number they use to make these trusts?
I'm not sure about that, but there's a ton of information on those websites that I showed you. So,
Okay.
and I'm with you there. I'm gonna continue to do research. Throw me some stuff your way when you learn it. But I can tell you this: what I've learned so far about the estate trust is that obviously the estate trust is not you. It was under the auspices of honor and what do you call it? The government, federal government being magnanimous, they created these estate trusts for us to use. At least that's what they said. But they conveniently didn't teach us how to use them.
Okay.
And
So
they
how did we
also,
get access of it?
yeah, they didn't teach us how to access them. So then that created a situation for them in their favor, because then when you have a U.S. citizen that wanders into a court, one of their administrative courts or their admiralty courts or their maritime courts, um, they presume that the U.S. citizen does not know how to manage the estate. Now, keep in mind, I told you that legal fictions cannot achieve parity with living men and women. That's part of the reason the estate trust was created. Now, didn't get into this before, but back in 1863, whenever the Confederacy of States went to, it wasn't a war. No war was declared. It was a mercenary conflict. During that mercenary conflict, the Confederacy of States was not in operation. The British territorial government said, I'll do you a favor and I'll provide you with government services until you get your Confederacy of States rebuilt and until you get your Federation of States rebuilt and your American federal subcontractor rebuilt. So we'll do you a favor and we'll offer you those services to replace that. So what they did, instead of the state of Maine, capital the state of Maine, it was lowercase the state of Maine. That was the semantic deceit. So the entire United States, the District United States is incorporated. All of its federally enfranchised state of Oklahoma, state of Texas, state of Georgia, state of Arkansas, they are all lowercase the state of Maine incorporated. They are not sovereign governments like they were prior to the mercenary conflict. They are all incorporated. So fast forward to estates. It is not possible for an incorporated government services contractor to offer government services to a living man or woman. So they created estates and they named the estates in our names. So then anywhere you go in life, whether you pay a bill, whether you go to court, whether you save money in your personal banking account, the entire system is built on these trusts. And that shows you how big of a fraud it is, because the entire system is based on trust, yet not one U.S. citizen has a clue about how to manage their trust. So when you wander into an admiralty court, these judges presume that you don't know how to manage your trust, which is true. They've arranged for that. And they presume that you are an idiot, as it were, or a pauper, or crazy, and that you don't know how to manage your estates. Remember when I told you that the honorable purpose for legal is to imply a contract, or to imply whenever the law is not been declared, it has not been expressed. So what they do is they presume under the auspices of honor that you are a minor and that you are a pauper and an idiot and you don't know how to manage your own affairs, and therefore they are going to do it for you. And so they presume that you are the trustee of this trust that you don't know how to manage.
Sounds
So
like the English.
it's exactly like it, and it kind of makes sense since the British territorial is operated by the crown. So from that time on, federal government has an extensive system of their estate, which has their same name, the U.S. citizen's estate. So when each American is born, the estate trust is created. That estate trust was bonded for 600,000 and then insured for 1 million. As I understand it, it's either 1975 or maybe 1978. The trust is then bonded for 1 million and insured for 2 million. So that's the current status of those trusts. The birth certificate is offered as surety, backing those estate trusts. So surety is basically a security. This includes all your private property, all your intellectual property, your home, your car, all your labor for your lifetime. This act was sold to the American people as a benefit, but Americans were purposefully not taught how to use it as beneficiaries. So Securitizing someone's labor is slavery. It is unlawful. It is illegal. This process of converting someone from a living man into an estate is called unlawful conversion. That's something you need to remember. Kidnapping someone from the land jurisdiction to the sea jurisdiction of commerce is called inland piracy. I mean, you could call it inland piracy if someone physically goes onto the land, grabs someone else, drags them onto the boat, and now they've been kidnapped, and now they have to obey. They have to do as they're told because they're not in the land jurisdiction anymore. Well, if you do that in commerce, if you do that legally, it's still inland piracy. It's been outlawed for 200 years. Because both the U.S. citizen and their estate trusts are creations of the United States of America Incorporated, they are considered employees of that company and liable for their commercial debts. So when the federal services contractor goes bankrupt, and this was planned all along, the secondary creditors from Europe come calling for the assets. And the operators say, well, we're in bankruptcy protection, but we have employees. We have U.S. citizens who are held liable for our debts. So bankruptcy has always been the plan. Each government service contractor has gone bankrupt for this purpose. There's been at least 3 that I know of. They were trying to steal our country from us for over a span of more than 100 years. So there's another guy, his name is Ron Gibson. He wrote a book called Land Patents, All You Need to Know About Land Patents. And he's been at that for maybe 30 years, helping people to establish their land patents so that they can own their land. And Ron is the guy who said, who reminded me of that quote, if you don't own property, you probably are property. But he said, and Anna von Reitz has backed this up, they are after our land. The land, if you are a miner, you know that all wealth in the world comes from land. And this is the land in the international jurisdiction, right? It's not necessarily the soil jurisdiction, it's the international land jurisdiction. It's so important that a country has the right to access the minerals that are under someone's private property because it's so important to the national trust. And American state nationals are inheritors of that land trust. So the land is where all wealth comes from, all technology in the world comes from the land. And that's why these European banks, these international banks, have been trying to steal the land from Americans, basically since the country was founded. So back to estate trust. So here's another aspect that helps you understand the estate trust. Federal Reserve notes are not backed by anything of intrinsic value, such as gold, silver, or oil. Federal Reserve notes are backed by the good faith and credit of the District United States. And of course, that includes their 300 million employees, the estate trusts, U.S. citizens. So that gives you a little more context of why the estate trusts are so important. And it's backing our our debt system. Okay, now questions. Who's got questions?